Good morning, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. And in light of recent developments, I think we got to lead the day off with some news that is following up on the Ryan Grubb hiring that was announced last night. So, Ryan Grubb, he's here in Seattle. I'm going to talk about him at length in a future video. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, there's a lot that needs to be said about what Grubb has done in college football over the last several years and what he's bringing to the table here. I'm excited to see what he's going to do. Should be a lot of screen passes because we did a lot of that at UW. Should be a lot of deep routes as well. By the way, he loves his deep routes. So if you were watching the Seahawks last year, thinking, where's the deep shots to DK Metcalf? Where's the shot plays? Where's the nine routes? They probably are going to be back this year. The only thing that could prevent things like that from happening successfully would be if the offensive line can't hold up. So I want to talk in this video a little bit about our offensive line coach because it looks like we have one already. Following the Ryan Grubb announcement, we got this. And I didn't want to make a video about this last night because it was so late and I was already streaming on Twitch. But yeah, it looks like we have an offensive line coach already, somebody who followed DeBoer and Grubb to Alabama and is now going to be following Grubb back to Seattle. It's Scott Huff. So Scott Huff was a very, very short-term Alabama offensive line coach. Now he's swinging back to Seattle to be the Seahawks offensive line coach. And I want to talk about that a little bit because that part of the equation is very important. The Seahawks offense last year was pretty good. It was okay. It was somewhere between average and above average. So the offensive coordinator can definitely improve on that. But given that Ryan Grubb is a first-time NFL offensive coordinator and given what he's going to be working with, I don't think he's going to be able to make a massive improvement to where the offense is now top two or anything like that. He's going to try to take an offense that was approximately average last year, maybe a little bit better, and advance them to the point where they're good. Go from like 16th to 11th, go from 15th to 10th, something like that. But the offensive line coach, and it looks like it is going to be Scott Huff, he's going to be taking it over an offensive line that was one of the worst in the NFL last year, bottom five. So he's going to have to really go all out just to get the group at an average level and to get them good. I mean, forget about it. Like getting this offensive line to a good point would require a monumental, massive improvement. So that's a big responsibility for this new offensive line coach. Now, no disrespect to Andy Dickerson, who's gone to Cleveland now. I don't think he did a bad job. I just don't think he was in a good situation because of all the injuries and because some of the players we had weren't that good to begin with. But Scott Huff comes in here. The entire interior offensive line is about to be on the market as free agents, and the tackles are young and could go one way or the other in their careers at this point. This is a very pivotal moment for Cross and Lucas. So there's a lot of work that need to be done. But this is definitely going to be one of the things that I'm most excited about with the Ryan Grubb entry as the offensive coordinator. The fact that he's bringing Scott Huff with him. So Scott Huff does not have a Wikipedia page, but he does have this page on the Huskies website that goes over his history as a coach. So just to briefly go over it to understand what we're getting into here, he has been the Washington offensive line coach for 7 years, from 2017 to 2023. He was also the run game coordinator for the first 3 years. So pretty good run as an offensive line coach. He started during the Chris Peterson years. He was not here for the best of Chris Peterson. Chris Peterson's best year in UW was 2016. In 2016, Scott Huff was still the Boise State coach, and he had a lot of different responsibilities over the years at Boise State. Boise State is where he went to college. You can see he was a coach there for over 10 years. Started with tight ends, offensive line, back to tight ends, and then tight ends slash special team coordinator, then offensive line, and then offensive line and co-offensive coordinator. So you can see him move up in that move up in that system, move up in that program. And then when he's really ready to take the leap, he goes to Washington to be under Peterson for a few years. And he was somebody who was retained for Jimmy Lake, and he was somebody who was retained for Kalen DeBoer, which that's a tremendous vote of confidence for a guy to survive multiple head coaching changes. So this guy was good. This guy did a really good job. And I don't think I'm going to need to sell anybody on the job he's done the last 2 years in Washington, but it has been a phenomenal run for this offensive line. We've got guys like Troy Fatanu, who's probably going to be a first or second round pick this upcoming draft. You've got guys like Jackson Kirkland, who's found a place in the NFL. You've got guys like Henry Bainvalu, who was a draftable name in the draft last year. You've had, and then you go back further, you've got guys like Trey Adams. So there are some really good things in the Scott Huff resume here. And our offensive line was considered by many to be the best in college football last year. You had, obviously, the big one was Fatanu, but you also had Rosengarten, who had a really nice season. You've got some guys on the interior. They're not as prolific. Don't get me wrong. They're not guys who are necessarily going to get drafted super high, but they were good, and they worked really well as a unit, and they were able to keep Michael Penix in one piece for 2 years. Not easy to do, as we saw in Indiana. Not easy to keep Michael Penix upright. They did it 2 straight years. And Scott Huff, you got to give him a lot of credit for that. And again, I want to stress, this was not just a DeBoer thing. This is not just a Ryan Grubb thing. He had success in Washington under a completely different staff with Chris Peterson. Again, Nick Harris would go on to become a somewhat relevant player in the NFL. Trey Adams. Now, Trey Adams didn't make it to the NFL, but he was an excellent player at the college level. He just got hurt before he got to the NFL. Caleb McGarry would go on to become a notable player in the NFL as well. He was a really good player in college. And for those years where he was the run game coordinator as well, our run game was good. You had Myles Gaskin doing his stuff. You had, God, who was the other guy? God, I can't remember the guy's name right now. But we had some really good rushing attacks during that period of time. Coleman Shelton was a lineman early in that period who was pretty good for the Huskies. So this guy did great work with that offensive line. Over these last 7 years, it's been, I mean, you had that 1 year where the offense was really bad, the Jimmy Lake year, with the bad Jimmy Lake year. There were 2 Jimmy Lake years. One was okay, the other wasn't. Other than that, this offense has been really good for most of this period, and the last 2 years in particular has been lights out. And Scott Huff is a big reason why. So this is a great get for the Seattle Seahawks. And this guy has his work cut out for him. But again, once you get past the fact that this guy doesn't really have NFL experience, because you can look at the resume. Washington Huskies, Boise State Broncos, Arizona State, what are they? I think the Sun Devils? Yeah, Sun Devils. Never been in the NFL before. It is a different game in college. I get it. But look, this Seahawks team is going for broke. They are taking big risks. And the thing about big risks is there's usually a big reward. And if a guy like Scott Huff can translate what he's doing at the college level to the NFL level, that is a risk with a big, big reward, because he's been phenomenal for the last 7 years. All right. Let me know what you think down below about this one, but this is one of my favorite aspects of getting Ryan Grubb. I like Ryan Grubb. I think he has a chance to be great for the Seahawks. I think that he has the opportunity to be a very, very hot commodity in a year or two as a head coach because of the job I think he'll be able to do here. I think that there is some upside to the way in which he runs his offense with all the motion that he uses. Like I said, all the deep shots that he likes to take, which I think will utilize Geno and Metcalf even better than they've been used before, assuming those guys are here, which is not necessarily guaranteed, but I suspect it's more likely than not. And I like the fact that he's going to want to go for it on 4th down a lot, and I think that McDonald will enable him. I like all these things. But bringing Scott Huff with him is just as good as those things, And unlike the Grubb situation, where I feel like there's some real risk involved, Scott Huff, I feel very secure about being good. If he fails in Seattle, it won't be because of him. It'll be because we didn't give him good enough players. And there's no doubt he's gotten really good players these last several years in Washington, but he's also done some really good work shaping these players, and he's also done a really good job working with players that weren't blue chippers, that weren't great, putting them in situations where things could work, putting them in situations where their weaknesses would get covered up. So looks like Scott Huff is your O-line coach. There's still a lot more work that need to be done. I think Grubb is going to be the quarterback coach. That's my understanding anyway. But if not, we need a quarterback coach, running back coach, wide receiver coach, because Sanjay Lal went to the Chargers. Tight end coach. There's still some safeties coach, cornerback coach we're probably going to need. There's some stuff that needs to be done. We have a linebacker coach, but we got to figure out what we're doing with BT Jordan as well. So there's still work to be done, but this is a huge piece, and I really like this. I'm down with Scott Huff, down with what he's done, and I'm excited to see what he brings to Seattle in 2024. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. There's a lot more to talk about today, but I wanted to get out in front with this one because this is I think, a very big deal. And we needed to nail this hire because the offensive line has been so bad this last year. It was, again, bottom 5. This guy's going to be in charge of making it much better than that.